Hello all! I wanted to do something a little bit different to celebrate finally reaching the 10,000 subscriber milestone, and with this I really wanted to highlight some of the incredibly talented people that have worked with me and contributed in one way or another to the channel, and whose efforts have helped get the channel to where it is today. So I asked 9 people who have collaborated with me to each pick one match for me to review, and I'm just going to give some thoughts and analysis on each of their picks today. I hope you all enjoy it. Our first match comes to us from SamTheVAMod. Sam and I first got in touch when he reached out to me to guest on the Sweet Chinwag podcast to talk about Eddie Kingston. You can check out that episode and more from Sam and his fellow co-hosts on Spotify and wherever else you might get your podcasts. Sam first edited for me on my 1991 retrospective, but most people will know him best for the banger title sequence he made for my Jon Moxley video. He's been a regular on my channel ever since, and he recently opened up shop for commission work, so hit him up for all your video editing needs at stvminquiries@gmail.com. Follow him on Twitter, check him out on Twitch. Sam rules. Here we've got Doug Williams defending the FWA title against masked random no-name American Dragon. Let's see if Williams can get anything out of the kid. The match is wrestled under 2 out of 3 falls rules. The first fall is probably my favorite of the entire match. It shows a lot of careful consideration and structuring from both men involved. That first fall is filled with the kind of extremely solid and crafty technical wrestling that you want from these two, especially in a British setting. The best part of that fall comes from Dragon working over Doug's leg. Despite Dragon's young age as well as his atrocious attire and mask, he looks confident and extremely capable picking apart Doug's leg in interesting and suitably brutal ways on the mat. I also like the leg work as a bit of a red herring for how the fall eventually ends. When Doug goes for his patented chaos theory, Dragon blocks the move by exploiting the bad leg, only to switch up his attack and quickly lock in the cattle mutilation for a submission victory. It's a clever way to pay off the leg work without being too obvious or cliche about things. The second fall doesn't have quite as much interesting going on about it as that, but it's not bad at all. Doug does drop his leg selling for the most part in order to play the proud babyface. I do like that the second fall ends with a direct callback to the first, showing that both men are learning and strategizing as the match continues. The final fall is fine. There's some no-selling in there that I don't enjoy so much, but the bombs are nice for what they are, and the finish is a really gruesome-looking Chaos Theory variant with a tiger suplex instead of the usual German. All in all, this is a good match, not too long and worth watching for completionists or simply those who are curious. Both guys are extremely solid in this, and they put together something strong in the process. Man, I wonder what happened to that American Dragon kid. No way his career goes anywhere with that name and attire. 3.5 stars for this one. At this point, you should all know IQWrestler. They're an absolute behemoth in the wrestling MV game these days, and they continue to churn out quality work, highlighting legends of the industry in compelling and visually striking ways. My personal favorites of theirs include the Flair Sting My Way video and the Stan Hansen highlight, but there's a whole library of great videos to check out from him. IQ's best known on this channel for doing the title sequences to my 1990s videos, but they've also done a few for the Walking the King's Road series on particularly grand occasions. If you haven't checked out their work on YouTube yet, why the hell not? Follow them on Twitter where you can ask if they've ever even worked before. This match fucks! It's no shock that Twitter's resident Inokiism advocate IQWrestler picked a match from 2000's New Japan for me, and one of the best matches of that era to boot. Kazuyuki Fujita doesn't often get named as one of the better IWGP heavyweight champions, and that is a damn shame because this match lies testament to his greatness. This has one of the hottest starts to a match ever, with Shibata punching Fujita in the face nailing him with a backdrop and then caving his skull in with a kick. Just a delightful early flurry of violence that perfectly catches the tone that this match provides. From there, the match becomes a test of patience, as Shibata finds ways to incrementally pick apart the champion. The centerpiece of this particular narrative comes from Shibata using German suplexes to wear out Fujita for a sleeper. Unfortunately, Shibata loses his cool, and when he forgoes the sleeper to go for a PK and a series of head kicks, that only gives Fujita the space he needs to strike Shibata into absolute oblivion. Shibata makes a great show of trying to endure, but the awesome power of Kazuyuki Fujita puts him down in the end. I love this match, a perfect example of the stories that can be told in a shorter space without sacrificing spectacle or explosiveness. Brilliant stuff, the kind of match that would make wrestling all over the world far more interesting and exciting if more people learned to take its example. Fujita rules, Shibata rocks, this match owns. 4.5 stars for me. Forrest Sowa was one of the wrestling YouTubers I looked to for inspiration when I first wanted to do wrestling video essays. His very first Jay White video essay showed me that there was a template that could be followed to discuss wrestling on YouTube in interesting ways. Ever since, we've collaborated on several projects, including the infamous Jay White follow-up video, which now exists only as a podcast you can check out on Spotify. He currently does videos covering ROH's Pure Division and concocting various other horrors to inflict upon an unsuspecting public. Check out his YouTube channel, follow him on Twitter, and look out for his stuff on the official ROH YouTube channel as well. This is Forrest Sowa's favorite match of all time, and I've decided not to hold that against him. Don't worry though, this match actually rules. Pretty much exactly what you want from a car crash WWE gimmick main event, and especially for these two. The Undertaker and Edge have spent months upon months feuding for the World Heavyweight Championship at this point, even main eventing against each other at WrestleMania 24. In the months since, the World Heavyweight Championship was stripped from The Undertaker via Vicky Guerrero GM shenanigans, and then subsequently held up when Taker beat Edge via countout for the vacant title. And so naturally, that leaves us here with the title literally hanging in the balance in a TLC match. There's a slight awkwardness to open, a sluggishness to get through the opening spots, but once this gets going, it's actually pretty great. For one, Edge is a master of these WWE-style gimmick matches, and he makes the most of his performance here. Not only does he put over the fear that he feels for The Undertaker without crossing over into looking like an absolute goober, he also bumps like crazy for Taker in the early goings. Edge even has a really excellent heat segment here when he just batters Taker's leg and keeps hitting him in the head with a chair. It's incredibly effective, and props to The Undertaker, he sells pretty much all of that wonderfully. Hell, Taker even puts over the bad leg with a rather convincing selling performance here. Down the stretch, this gets structured like your classic WWE deck stacked against the babyface match, with both the Edgeheads and La Familia coming out to attack Taker. Both Ryder and Hawkins take some gruesome bumps through tables on the floor, while Taker knocks La Familia out with their chair shots. That just makes his defeat all the more crushing when Edge puts him through a stack of tables on the outside and wins the title. This is a really great match. As far as TLC matches go, it's neatly structured, tells an entirely cohesive narrative throughout, but still gives us all the requisite nutty bumps that makes TLC work. This is a delightful match. Well worth the watch. 4.25 stars for me. The former Tyler Kuhn Williams found my channel way back in its early days, and he's been a friend and supporter ever since. I've showed up on his channel watching AEW Dark, we've done the Pro Wrestling is Dead podcast with Forrest Sowa. Tyler's been there from the beginning, man. He's been incredibly prolific for years, way before even I got onto wrestling YouTube, even when TV Asahi keeps harassing him, so show him some support. Check out his channel and give him a follow on Twitter and TikTok. The Stadium Stampede is a hoot. There's nothing too serious about it, and that's clear from the band and the cheerleaders at ringside, as well as the inner circle coming out in football jerseys. Everyone's here just to have a good time, and you know what? A good time was had. This is an exercise in maximalism, given a particular space and the freedom to do pretty much everything. In a lot of ways, it takes after the kind of weird, empty arena match that Minoru Suzuki had with Sanshiro Takagi in DDT at the Tokyo Dome. Sure, there's fighting, but that's mostly just a pretense for silly things to happen. And as far as silly things happening, there's some pretty great stuff in this. Matt Jackson does a locomotion Northern Lights across the football field, Hangman comes riding in on a horse, Jericho and Aubrey Edwards do a real-time replay check, Matt Hardy reincarnates multiple times in a swimming pool. Amidst all the comedy though, there's actually some pretty good fighting too. The bar sequence between Jake Hager and Hangman Page actually plays out with some decent brutality. It makes a good use of the space, and they do some stuff that looks really solid. The climactic one-winged angel leaping off a platform in the stands looks fantastic, and it's a fitting end to the match. No one came to this match looking for anything serious, but given the tone they set and the things they did, it's pretty great for what it is. 4 stars for this one. Chris is one of the YouTubers that I fondly refer to as one of my children. I'm not trying to belittle or reduce his accomplishments, though. He's a clever writer, and even when our opinions don't match, which is often, there's a humor and personality to his voice that I find impossible to turn away from. You might recall him as a voice in my 6-3-94 Kings Road video, and we also did the Best Years in Wrestling draft with Forrest Sowa together. Make sure to subscribe to his channel, Chris O'Brien on YouTube, follow him on Twitter, and support all his projects. I don't know, guys, this one seemed a little bit baffling to me. Chris is way more involved with Stardom as a whole, so maybe he understands this match more than I do, given the backstory and emotional stakes involved. The pre-match promos certainly hint at that kind of emotional distress between these two. Going in cold though, I truly just couldn't get into this match. So much of it feels like it's worked at just a fine level. It's rarely outright bad, but if you're being just fine for something that's presented with a lot of importance and with a major title on the line, then you're probably not doing yourself the right amount of favors. They just kind of plod along with some okay-ish mat work. Then Tam's able to get that Hangman Dragon Sleeper in the corner and follows it up with a big crossbody to the outside. And I thought that would start bringing some life into this match, but then things just get back in the ring where it doesn't really improve much. There's a lot of striking in this match that just flies by and looks kind of soft. I don't know Hoshiki well, but I know she has a reputation for kicking, and her kicks didn't look all that special in this match at all. It doesn't help that there's some mind-boggling moments like Hoshiki nailing a Meteora on the apron only for Tam to do a weird bridging no-sell out of it that looked like one of the most forced and inorganic things I've ever seen. By the time the bombs start falling, I found myself just wondering how we'd gotten to this point without things actually feeling like they're escalating, and also thinking how none of these bombs felt particularly great or impactful. This match left me cold, more confused than anything else. Sorry guys, very much not for me. 2 stars. If you've been on wrestling YouTube for a long time, you'll know the work of Chris from ReloadLastSave, whether you know it or not. He's a regular editor for OSW Review, one of the monoliths of this scene. I was lucky enough to be able to work with Chris when I approached him to edit my Randy Orton 5-match primer. He approached that project with a staggering eye for detail and subtle visual humor that I still enjoy just thinking about to this day. The things he was able to do with practically zero direction just goes to show the kind of love he puts into his work, regardless. Check him out on Twitter as well as on his Twitch channel. He's awesome. The infamous Chamber of Horrors match from WCW Halloween Havoc 1991 occupies that wonderful space in wrestling where it is simultaneously very bad and also the greatest thing I've ever seen. The object of the match is to put one of the members of the opposing team in an electrical chair that lowers from the roof into the center of the ring, and then activate the power. Cactus Jack enters for this match carrying a chainsaw. And that's about all that you need to know to understand what we're working with when it comes to this match. In terms of action, a lot of this is just walking and brawling and bumping around the cage. The action is pretty similar to a battle royale in that everyone just takes turns doing moves to each other. It's neither bad nor good for that. Perhaps the best thing in this is Sting just tossing a heavy wooden casted lid straight onto Cactus Jack's head. Bless him. Cactus gives us such a good blade job in this too. He's just a little dedicated, realistic violence to stand out amidst the silliness of it all. Cactus Jack is an absolute powerhouse in this match, doing so much more than necessary, and that's what makes him an all-timer. Much more notable than anything the wrestlers do in this is the referee, a camera strapped to the referee's head that provides a first-person view of the action. An entirely redundant addition given that there are cameramen inside the cage, and by nature, referees aren't really supposed to see anything all that important. The match ends with Abdullah the Butcher in the chair getting roasted in one of the most iconic shots in WCW history. A beautiful moment, and Abdullah sells it with just the kind of over-the-top cheese that is owed to this stipulation. The cherry on top is him being resurrected because, as any horror fan knows, the monster always comes back in the end. Watch this match for Halloween. It's dumb, and it's fun, and it's far more charming than more cynical attempts in recent years to co-opt horror aesthetics in pro wrestling. I'd rate this match fuck yeah stars. RNKF Shirts is the very talented person behind my logo. She does incredible graphic design work though that goes so far beyond this little thing she made for the channel. Check out her Instagram or her Twitter page for even a second, and you'll see that she's capable of really fantastic artwork, and as you can tell by the name, she has a bunch of shirts that she designed herself, so go out of your way to check all of those out as well. Oh man, does this rule? Of the matches we've gotten to so far, this is clearly the most high-profile and noteworthy yet. This is the opener to WrestleMania 10, the singles match that pays off nearly half a year of build between Bret and Owen Hart, and it's probably one of maybe 2 or 3 matches that could hands down be seen as the greatest WrestleMania opener of all time. I want to start with Owen Hart's performance because he is great in this. Because Bret's coming into this match wanting to do as little damage to his brother as possible, the burden of being the more expressive Hart falls on Owen's shoulders in this match. He does it so well. From the moment the doors at MSG slide open and he walks out, his purpose feels so clear. He's bitter, he's pissed off, and he's here to step out of Bret Hart's shadow. He does a lot of little things throughout the match to stay entirely detestable as a heel. For one, he's the first to constantly cheat throughout. He's the first to grab a fistful of hair, he's the first to start throwing punches, there's that beautifully positioned and timed low blow towards the finishing stretch. Then there's things like mocking Bret's hobbling when he goes for the leg at the end. Just great stuff that doesn't feel too overbearing. Now let's get to Bret. God damn, what a masterful performance from one of the greatest ever. The structure of the match has Bret's fingerprints all over it. Initially smooth and precise as he wants to keep things professional with his brother, this is all about escalation as Owen keeps pushing and provoking Bret. That comes in the form of back work from Owen when he's able to cut off Bret's early momentum. Then later on, when Bret messes up his own knee hitting a plancha to the outside, there's leg work that Bret sells beautifully. The entire back half of this match has Bret limping through his offense, looking constantly bothered by the injury in a realistic and smart way. I fully expect that we'll be talking about this again in the 1994 retrospective when I get to that in approximately 10 years or something, but this really is one of the best WrestleMania matches ever. An absolute classic that you've probably already seen. And if you haven't, fix that. Right now. This can wait. Go on. 4.5 stars for this one. Quentin is someone I've always looked up to when it comes to pro wrestling criticism. His Psychology is Dead year-end podcasts with Tim and Brock are landmark moments for me every year. I've discovered so much about pro wrestling because of those podcasts and still continue to do so because I'm their friend now. You may recognize him as one of my guest contributors on the Brian Goat video. Quentin currently hosts the QNTR podcast alongside Tim, and you can check that out on the We Don't Know Wrestling podcast network. He's also firing up a blog real soon, and I will relentlessly mock him if he doesn't stick with it. Check him out on Twitter, and check out the podcast on Twitter as well at QNTR. Again, this match fucks. It really does. There's no lazing about, with KAORU going for the hot start. When Aja's able to dodge a dive through a table though, that's when this stuff gets real fun. I love how the primary weapons the match is built around are the broken halves of the table used in the opening moments. It lends this match a much more organic and natural vibe, as though we're watching a real brawl unfold instead of a carefully laid out gimmick match. There's a lot of crowd brawling early on that's not great in the setup, but when they start throwing heavy metal panels at each other, it gets better. There's a general sense of chaos to all of it that plays off well, such that when they're a little more sluggish and methodical in their movements in the ring, you can tell it's because they've just been thrashing each other from the word go. The real narrative substance of this match comes when Aja goes for her Hurricane, only for KAORU to jab her arm with the broken table. It just looks so brutal, even more brutal than if Aja had just backfisted the broadside of the wood. Aja sells the moment perfectly too, completely collapsing in pain as she starts bleeding from the wrist where the wood struck her. So great. KAORU zones in on the arm from there, really giving it hell. It's especially great when she returns to using the splintered wood to attack the arm, both in spectacular ways as well as more grounded and realistic methods. From there, Aja actually has to fight from underneath as she works to overcome the damage to her limb and find the strength to nail just the right Hurricane to put KAORU down. This is fantastic. Violence from bell to bell. It has pretty much everything you'd want from a high-octane match like this, from high spots to stiff strikes to a clever use of weapons. No other way to put it. Certified banger. 4.5 stars for this one. What's left to say about Jamesie? He's a bit of a legend in the podcasting scene, having been a member of the British Wrestling Experience podcast for a long time before stepping away. His most recent solo effort was the Boots and Trunks podcast, which provided lovely deep dives into significant matches and aspects of pro wrestling, while tied in with the very real world of sports, which I know nothing about. Jamesie was also another guest on the Brian Goat video, and he recently returned to the BWE podcast for the transfer draft, which he rightfully won for having a banger card. Follow him on social media and keep an eye out for the Boots and Trunks podcast whenever that may return, or whatever else Jamesie might be working on. Of all the matches selected for this particular video, this is the one that carries the most significance and stature. Wrestled on the auspicious date of August 8th, 1988 or 8/8/88, this match would be the final time that Antonio Inoki ever challenged for the IWGP Heavyweight Championship, a result of the stipulation of this match, which stated that if Inoki failed to capture the title, he could never challenge for it again. It is also a 60-minute time limit draw, which means that it is an epic match both in scale, context, and reputation. This is a beautiful match in the most literal sense. Just visually, it is astounding. Everything in it speaks to a kind of primal, essential image of what pro wrestling should look like. The shouting fans in the stands cheering on their heroes, the two athletes broad and chiseled in their black boots and trunks, even their movements, the physicality these two bring have such a fundamentally sound and aggressive feel to them, a physicality that I can only properly describe as classical. This match embodies the old school championship match right down to the 60-minute Broadway. It's wrestled like a game of inches, with each hold being fought for and struggled, every shift in momentum being a potential game changer that could spell the doom of either man. Most of it is about fighting for and escaping holds, and once those do get locked in, they're filled with so much meaning. For example, there's the way that Fujinami tries to put Inoki into the reverse Indian deathlock, only for Inoki to reverse it, sending Fujinami scrambling in fear for the ropes. This works in the moment here as a great spot. It's even better when you realize that when these two wrestled in their first singles match in 1985, Fujinami spent an extended period of the match in the reverse Indian deathlock. Because so much of this is built around the mat work and classical holds, when things do ramp up, it's explosive. Something as simple as a crisscrossing of the ropes plays out like a breathtaking change of pace that could just be a key to victory when Fujinami uses it to get a roll-up pin on Inoki. Every time either man is able to nail a backdrop on their opponent, it's such a high point as the violence begins to escalate. Then there's the striking. Two moments in this match embody how significant the striking was, and also the masterful physical performance that Tatsumi Fujinami brings to the match. The first is when Inoki nails a rolling capo kick onto Fujinami that sends the dragon falling into the ropes, subsequently bumping onto each rope on the way down to the canvas. A fantastic spot, perfectly captured by the angle on the cameras. The second moment comes when Inoki begins really firing up, nailing Fujinami with a flurry of open palm strikes. Indignant, Fujinami walks into the striking only for Inoki to ramp up the violence with straight punches and then an enziguri. When the enziguri hits, Fujinami fights his own body's collapse all the way down to the mat. You can see him visibly frustrated, struggling with the failures of his own body. It's a stunning moment, perhaps one of the most iconic in pro wrestling history, especially if we're talking about individual moments of selling. This isn't a perfect match though. The biggest flaw would be that at around the 45 or 50 minute mark, they lose the crowd. Not completely, but the blazing energy that they started with begins to really simmer down as fans figure that an hour draw is incoming. The closing moments do bring the energy down just a tad, and that keeps this out of the realm of the truly greatest matches of all time. Still, on its own, it's a watchable 60 minutes of pro wrestling, which is so hard to do. In fact, watchable is just saying the very least about this match. It's great, and the highs it reaches are truly iconic and memorable and deserve to be put up in the canon of pro wrestling. An excellent match that only suffers because there's just a little bit too much of it. 4.5 stars for this one. Thank you everybody so much for watching, and of course a massive thank you for helping me get to 10,000 subscribers. That is insane to me. You guys are great. Thank you for sticking around. And of course, I want to send a huge thank you to all my supporters on Ko-fi. Thank you to my one-time supporters in AJ Tigner, Christoph, Bear, and Ryan Poole. And a huge, huge thank you to my monthly supporters in James Draper, Captain Jack Heartless, Eddie Roberts, Jacob Dickens, Matt Brummett, Chick Fritz, Spiders in My Bed, Don Kiger, Arch Stanton, Timothy R. Buchner, In the Lane, Kid King Pin, Joe Humphreys, Christopher Jackson, Saltine Daltine, Peter Vinnison, Dustin Faulkner, Edgar Molina, Four Pillars of Hell, Sean Emily, Mason Rollison, Craig Jones, and Jacob VR. You guys are so great. Thank you for helping keep the channel. It's helping it grow. You guys rule so much. I hope you all have a good day. Thank you so much, and have a good one.